Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by. Today I'm going to talk about speech delay. So, speech delay can happen for some kids during their early age. So, let's say your kid may be 3 or 4 years old and still they are not speaking. Usually, the kids used to talk by a year or year and a half. It depends from kids to kid, but that's the time frame. So usually kids usually start talking that time. But what happens if your kid is not talking, and parents usually worry, and it just worries them a lot. So what happened? What could be the reason? So this video is all about to talk about um, my experience. So it might help someone who are looking or sailing in the same situation or maybe similar. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm a father of a kid who started speaking late. So I believe I can talk about my experience as a parent and how we can deal with this, or I can tell how I deal with this situation so that it may be helpful for others. So let's discuss the situation and we can talk about some of the things that I've came across might be helpful to some of you. So, so there are various situations you probably would end up in. Um, your kid cannot speak or not speaking. So, some of the things I would just going to go over rough in the questions, and then I'll discuss each and every in topic separately. So, from the diagnostic point of view, have you noticed your kid responding to sound or music? Because that's the first thing you need to diagnose a kid. Means like, is your kid is able to hear well, or at least can able to respond for any kind of a sound or music. For example, if a kid is able to respond for some kind of a bird sound or maybe a song, and able to kick her legs, are able to be happy. So those are the signs a kid is actually able to hear, or being frightened of any kind of a sound. Because early babies, a baby which is lesser than a year old, probably you can see the as a parent you can see all these kind of symptoms. So you can diagnostic the kid, saying that the kid is actually responding for the sound, means in various forms like being happy or being scared or any of these reaction for the sound. If the answer is yes, then it's good. It's a good news. Okay, that's one diagnostic. In general, um, male versus female babies. Female babies start to speak earlier than male or boys. So usually that's just the way things work. If you categorize this two behavior, now we'll go to a next diagnostic. Um, have you ever checked your kid's mouth and tongue? So if you see your kid tongue, this one, it's there'll be a big connection between your uh, tongue and the lower jaw. So that's called, if a kid is that connection is too tight to the tip of the tongue and the kid cannot move the tongue. So probably that is actually one of the reason your kid cannot do much, or maybe that it could be a problem as well for eating food. It's tied up altogether because the tongue plays a major role in speaking, um, sound, and eating food, because it's a router to route your food as well. So you have to check, or if you can check if your kid tongue has been pulled inward. So that is actually a stopper for kid to speak or make any kind of reasonable sounds. That's one diagnostic, and then go to another one. Let's keep going, and then I'll explain each and everything separate. And here, after the tongue tie thing, probably are you living in a foreign country? Or maybe you're living in an area where your people or your family is not around. So that could be one of the other diagnostic to check. So let's say you and your spouse move to a different country, and for whatever reason, and you end up having a baby there, and then probably your spouse may be out for work, and a mom is the only one at home, and there's nothing to talk or speak. It's quiet, and probably television are the only thing, but it's not a two-way interaction. So that could be one thing to just as an example to think of. And what is another thing to think of? Sensitive to sound and noise. So, okay, so we talked about this before. No, we talked about before is actually about is your kid able to hear the sounds. Now, this is the opposite of it. Means not exactly opposite. It's the higher end of it or weaker end of it. Means is your kid able to tolerate the sound? So, means if the sound is so noisy for a kid or just a regular sound that a normal human being can handle, maybe a little too much for your kid. So, for example, a blender. So, let's say you have a blender at home and you're making a milkshake or any kind of a smoothie. And when you're using a blender, your kid starts to cry or showing some discomfort, or feeling scared or afraid. Or maybe you're running a vacuum at home. So that's one thing to notice. And is your kid growing in an isolated environment without being exposed with other kids? That's another diagnostic to look for. Your kid don't know how to suck the milk from the breast, and you tried all the possibilities, but still your baby doesn't know how to suck milk. So that is a problem. So you may be working on using a breast machine to suck the milk, and maybe you're feeding your kid with other alternative ways. But if your kid doesn't know to breastfeed, that's point to be noted. We'll come back to that. And picky eating. So let's say if a kid is so picky and only can eat only certain foods or like eating only certain foods, not ready to eat other foods. Is there any kind of such things? And another one is when you eat, you have to excrete. So let's say your kid eats but have a problem in excretion. So that's another problem. So that's something you have to take a note of, like difficult bowel movement. Your kid cries, or maybe not making a bowel movement for a couple of days, and those things can be used as a diagnostic here. We'll come to that. Or there is another thing to look for is you originated from a tropical place. Means let's say you're from a sunshine, you're born and raised in a sunshine place, and you happen to move to a colder place. So just opposite of it, and you have a longer, colder winter weather, and you have a baby there, and now what? And that's one thing to think of. And the last one, which I would think here, is speech therapy. So, are you into a speech therapy? So, what's up with that? So, these are some of the diagnostic that we are going to go over in detail with one by one. So, just hang on. I'll go one by one. So, I'll talk about what we can do on these scenarios. Okay, let's get into action. So, the first thing I would like to call out here is to the parents. So, parents obviously be worried about the situation and become unconsciously, you may be comparing your kid with others. I mean, other kids. You all know every kid is different based on their genetical history, and so do their development as well based on their history. That's how it works. So it doesn't work the same way. Every kid doesn't cross the milestone in the same age or duration. So don't worry and don't compare your kid progress with other kids. Okay, that's the first thing to be conscious about your blind spot. As a parent, you have a blind spot. When you see it didn't happen in your side, it's just happening in the other side, you just started worrying and you start doing things wrong. So don't do that. Just calm down. And coming to the diagnostic steps, have your kid responds to any sounds or music? If answer is yes, That's good. Your kid's hearing ability is functioning, because that's how your kid can learn the sound and able to mimic the sound back. So that's a lot of science goes into that one, copying a sound. But the first thing you need to know is hearing ability is must to do that, because that's the device to intake the sound. But yes, if let's say your kid is able to hear the sound, uh, and able to react for some kind of a music or maybe some kind of a name, let's say you call a name or you just keep saying some words and kid might laugh or giggle, that are the good sign that there is something is happening. But how do you know all the frequencies that a human supposed to hear are that your kid able to hear all the sounds? So um, let's say your kid is able to hear some music or some kind of sounds, may not be able to hear all the sounds that we create or we make in this world, which is an audible range for human being. I'm talking about only audible range. I'm not talking about all the other ranges which we cannot hear, just a human audible range. So for that, it's better you can do a kind of audiology test. You can talk to your kid's pediatrician or a doctor in your country and request them, I would like to take a hearing test, and they will prescribe, or maybe they'll direct you to the right clinic and they can do an audiology test. So that usually the kid will be given a headphone, earphones or headphone, or maybe just sitting, if it's a baby is too small, maybe sitting in the middle of the room with mom, and there will be speakers around the room in the hidden place or in the visible place, and the sound will be played from all the direction. And based on your kids physical or viewing response or head movements, uh, the technicians in the audiology theater are probably able to um, grade kids' uh, audible range or audible abilities. That's what I would say. So that's something it's good to get it done. So if the results are good, or even if you see some parts a kid didn't do well, don't worry about it, because they are still growing. They are not adult. They are not fully grown out yet. So if you see about more than 50% a kid is doing well, or maybe 60, 70%, that's good. The more the number goes, the more it's good. So you don't have to be worried about. So if the kid is doing well, you don't have to be worried about. So that means the functionality is working and it'll improve as it goes. So you don't have to do any kind of much treatment on it. As they grow, they will get all the abilities and sound and audibility. Uh, that's from a general point of view, in the general cases. And the second thing we talked about early in the diagnostic is your kid having tongue tie. So tongue tie situations are usually maybe common or rare. I don't know the overall statistic, but if you happen to see your kid has this tongue tie, which will obviously have certain side effects in speaking, speech, and eat, whatever the kid is eating, or breastfeeding also have an impact, because if your tongue is not moving, you cannot really control that sucking things. Kid have tough time dealing with it. So the best way you can do is you can talk to the pediatrician or the kids doctor and ask for a ENT reference, or you can just go to directly ENT in your location if your insurance covers, or somebody, a good doctor over there, and discuss the situation. And if your kid is a baby less than a year old, where the kid's head is not in the control of the kid, because they have to grow out. So in that situation, maybe 6 months old or something, it's much easier to clip a baby's the tongue tie, this one, because it will be tied till the end. So what they do is probably the ENT specialist, they just simply clip it, and they just apply some kind of whatever it's supposed to be. ENT specialists know, and your kid will be fine. After that, the tongue will start moving, and maybe that helps easy some of the things. But if the kid is already a couple of years old and still you feel there is a tongue tie, kid cannot do well in speech and cannot eat, because when you eat, your food actually have to be moved left or right with your tongue, because your tongue is a router. It routes the food between your teeth, because teeth doesn't know to route it, but your tongue knows to route the food. So that plays a role in making your tongue to work. Also, it plays a role to speak, because your tongue plays a major role on moving. So it's really required your tongue to be agile, to able to make sound and also able to route the food. So this is a must to check. But some kids, they have still tongue tie when they grow out. The tongue tie will remain there and your tongue grow out, so that will compensate. So they don't really have a problem. But if a kid's tongue and they put like this, and if you go like a W, that means something is pulling inside. So first of all, the kid cannot put the tongue out. If you don't see that, means it's something is pulling inside. So that need to be addressed. So that helps in tongue tie overall. And do you live in foreign countries and you don't have people or your family around? If you have moved to foreign countries where you have less exposure to people around, or you're just new, you don't know how to connect, and then the challenges for your kid is to learn new sounds and words can be delayed, because that's how your kid will get exposed to surroundings, and that's how they learn. Maybe if you end up being in a different country where your language is different, that can be a delay, because first you don't know how to communicate with them and they don't know how to communicate with you. So those are all the challenges you will run into. um, let's say you live in a foreign country and you don't have people or family around you. So how do you deal with this situation? This is a situation which could have a side effect on speech. So if you let's take an example. Let's say you are originated from India or maybe somewhere from Asia, and you have moved to US, or another, for an example, in US, and now without your knowledge, you end up being in a colder place where you cannot really mingle with others. Maybe 6 months or 7 months in a year, probably it's cold, and you happen to have a baby, and you one of the spouse, in your mom will be at home and the spouse will be gone to office, and they just only two people, and maybe the kid will be sleeping all the time. Mom will be on the computer or watching TV or something like that. So that could be just a situation which could delay the speech because the exposure is very less in this scenario. So what you can do here is, like, you can try to find some early um, school or early education enrollment which is available in the state or a place where you live. That's one thing. Maybe that requires some kind of qualification. If your kid is not speaking, obviously that do qualify as well. So that will help. Early childhood help educations, or some schools are available out there. Some are run by the government, some are you have to pay for it, some do your insurance covers, whatever the situation is. Or if you end up being, you know, have no other option, so you can also look for a daycare near to your place, and you can enroll your kid in a daycare. Maybe even early daycares also available, maybe like a year or something a kid is old. So your kid can be there for half a day while the kid will be hearing all the other kids words and sound around it. That could help as well. So that the idea is that the kids, they just hear the sound. As they hear it again and again, they all the things what they're hearing is just go register in their brain, and they started recognizing. Slowly they make their own same sound or the different sounds, and as it goes it fine tune to the right words they start speaking. um, that's just an idea about it. So the idea is, make sure you don't get into a place where you're just isolated and don't have really a society or a group of people where you can work with or expose your kid. And other point, let's go to a next diagnostic step. So let's say your kid is sensitive to sound and noise. So let's say blender or a vacuum cleaner sounds actually disturbs your kid. If your kid cries when they hear a blenders or vacuum noise or any kind of other noise, then probably your kid is sensitive to sound and their sensory system is not fully ready or still in development phase. So they do take some time. As you know, kids are still growing. They will grow till they're adult. They will grow, and but their systems will grow in a different speed. It depends on their genetics and nature, how they have been designed by birth. So some kids, it can take few years or maybe like 6 7 years for them to just go through all the sensory system to function as they supposed to. Some kids are just be lucky they're born with all the sensory system in place and fully ready for them when they come out, and they can just handle everything. So it's just a different thing. So they slowly gain tolerance on the noise as the sensory system fully develops. And one more thing that you can confirm that your kid is a late bloomer, that you can see other things like, let's say, like your kid started to stand later time, or your kid is delaying walking. And your kid did walk, but it just took a little longer than regular kids. And the first thing you would probably see is teething. So teething will come before than all these things probably, and that was very slow, and that is an indication that your kid is actually um, growing slow or just a late bloomer. But it's a good thing because they start slow and they finish slow, so they don't just grow over time in a day. It's like boom, yeah, I got it, everything done. That's not the way it works. So the slower they grow, the slower they age out. So that's one good thing, but they have a side effect. That means they go step by step in everything. So that can be that could look like a late bloomer. So that's how you deal with that situation. And um, and the other topic which I would like to discuss is a picky eater or difficult bowel movement. So feeding them with good balanced homemade food starts from the scratch means you have to make everything from the fresh ingredients is really advised here. Avoid bottled processed food and other baby foods, because you would never know when it was been made and what has been prepared and been like months old. Why you want to feed your kids with months old prepared food? And you can make really a fresh food, and it's not difficult at all. You can get all the vegetables and you can cook it and puree it, and you can give it to your kids, babies. So it should just work easy. It's not difficult, and they consume less. So you can make in a little reasonable quantity, and maybe you can feed it for a couple of days, and that's just the easy way to do, and it's good for baby kids as well. And make sure that you include all required fiber, protein, and carb, fat. So carb and fat are very important for kids because they're growing. They definitely need carbohydrates and fat, must, because protein, obviously we know all the protein hype in the market. You will obviously include the protein by default, but carbon, fat is going to play a major role here, in general, because they need a lot of hormones and things. So fat has all the raw materials to do those hormone building stuff. And to talk about the second thing is like difficult bowel movement. So if your kid is actually struggling to bow a bowel movement, which can really impact the intake, means like if your kid, let's say your stomach is full or your colon is full, and how do you even eat extra when it's not moving? Because that will stop your kid to eat, or they end up being a picky eater. So you have to clear the system, their outbound system, probably using two things, which is one is the very homely way of doing things is a castor oil. So the one not I'm talking about the one which is used for food, not the one which is I'm talking about for engine oil. So castor oil is actually come from a seed. So people used to apply for their hair, and they also use it for cooking. So those can food grade oil. So you can get it from grocery stores, and take a quarter teaspoon. So quarter or half teaspoon. Start with quarter teaspoon and mix it in a little bit of milk, so it will float on the milk, and you can feed it to your kid. Uh, you can use a warm milk, not a cold one, because it's already oily. So use a little warmer milk, lukewarm milk will work. And let's say you couldn't find a castor oil and food grade castor oil, or you want to do something else other than this, yes, milk of magnesia is also there. So you can get it from any kind of pharmacy, or any some grocery stores also do hold them. It's like few dollars. So you can get them, and it'll be like a white milk kind of thing. Usually it'll be in the blue bottle, blue plastic bottle. So make sure that you take the same quarter or half, teaspoon, mix, dilute it a little bit with double the amount of water. Maybe if it's a half a teaspoon, 1 teaspoon of water, something like that. That is a direction will be there in the bottle. Make use of that direction and feed it to your kid. So it will clear their intestine, which helps them to consume food, which also helps absorb more nutrition and keep their tract clean. So that's one thing. So the next one we're going to talk about is your kid have some breastfeeding problem. So if your kid have a breastfeeding problem and don't know how to suck milk from the breast, then it's a clear sign of tongue tie or late development. So we did cover tongue tie a little before, um, but let's talk about development. So if your kid doesn't know, um, your kid don't know how to suck milk from mother's breast, then probably that's a sign that a kid is going to be probably a late developer. So if your kid is more than a year old, then you can try applying a pure honey on the breast, and make your kid to just lick the nipple or something like that. So if your kid likes sweet, just try it with little amount. Don't over feed honey. Just to try to understand what your kid like. If your kid really likes it, then probably they will kid start to lick first, and then it helps like a exercise for the tongue, and then slowly it start to suck on the breast, and it will end up uh, working against the breast to drink milk. So that's the way in those days grandmas used to treat these kind of situation at home. But some kids still they are stubborn, they don't like honey. You do whatever you want, they just don't care, they just be on their own way of doing stuff, they don't want to suck. So then all you can do is try to work around with feeding with a teaspoon, or some kids would like to drink from feeding bottle but may not be with um, the breast milk. So try to avoid the plastic feeders. Those are for grown-up kids, not for babies. So babies should have a rubber feeder, probably which mimics the same way how a baby suck from mother's breast. Do not use plastic feeders. So those are just useless. Don't. That will only make things worse. Don't do that. Plastics are not good for anybody. So going to another topic in the diagnostic is, so let's say you are from a tropical country, you're as a parents or tropical country and end up migrated to a cold place, and you happen to have a baby there. And now there is another situation you need to think of, because most people don't realize there is something was free and abundant in tropical place where you were born and raised, but your kids don't have it, or they don't have a source to get them. So that is nothing but sunlight. So sunlight plays a lot of major role in our life. So especially, vitamin D is a key player for many things. It helps in many ways in our body, and it's also a mood booster. The moment you see a sunlight, it helps you to be alert, and you can function a day very effectively. Then than a moody day. That's a difference. So, um, what happened when you have originated from a tropical country and migrated to a cold climate, but you may have not realized the free vitamin D that you used to have from a sunny. So, make sure you as a mother gain enough vitamin D from sun and pass it to your baby via breast milk. This just happens naturally if you live in a place where it's sunny or tropical. But if you happen to be in the cold, you would never know that this is happening, because we don't really see them on a day-to-day basis. But it has its own side effects when you don't have one. If not, let's say you really have to live in that place, but there are people who live there. Yeah, I know they live there, they all have the same problem, but they're all born and adapt to those situations. They have other options, like they take the vitamin D supplements, and they take it through milk. Milk may have some vitamin D, or you start looking for food that carries more vitamin D, which helps. Or if you even have a little bit of sunlight during a cold weather, See if you can sit next to a window, a transparent window where you can absorb the sunlight even though it's cold outside. So that way you can absorb the vitamin D in your body as a parent, I mean mother, and then you can pass that on to your baby via breast milk. So that helps. And another thing, if you see, in Asian countries, especially in India, sunbath is actually a common thing. Even in other Western countries, they do the same thing. But in kids, especially mother or grandma, they apply oil all over the body of kid. Especially, it's going to be a gingery oil, which is good, and it's fatty oil as well. And they apply it throughout the body of baby, and they make sure to rest the baby under the sun. Means grandma and mother will be next to it or put that on the leg, and they just make sure now comforting the baby as like baby is taking a sun bath. Parents should be there. It's not like drying a kid under the sun. Don't do that. So make sure that you are with the kid, or maybe just stretch your legs and make your kid to lay down upside down by giving two gaps. It's like a massage table. You stretch your both the legs and put your kids safely. Make sure that your kids have enough space to breathe, no, so that your kid will be facing down, and massage the back with sunlight hits the back, so it absorbs all the vitamin that required for the from the sun for the baby to grow. So just handle it carefully because you're applying oil to the baby, so don't slip your baby. Just keep in mind, just be careful. Make sure at least two people are there to handle the situation. Just take care. If there are grannies, grandmas, especially Asian ladies, they know how to deal with the situation. They are very careful and they are just used to this from the childhood. But if you've never done this, make sure that you take some seniors' attention on these things, because I really don't want to give you a direction where you can slip because it's oily. Baby can be oily, so just be cautious when you're dealing with such situation. Okay, the next one is speech therapy. You may have tried or thinking of trying speech therapy. So this usually comes when a kid crosses 3 years or 4 years. Still, your kid is not speaking. It's like, oh gosh, what's going on with my kid? My kid is not speaking, and other kids are doing, and what is going on? So it's okay. Don't freak out. So let's deal with this. How to deal with it. Let's talk about it. So speech therapy, yeah, it's going to be a good thing for some, not for everyone. That's my opinion. So maybe you may have a different opinion. That's a fine opinion. So let me talk about why. Let's say your kid is around 3 to 4 years old and still not speaking. So you have been seeking out pediatrician's help, and then you have, and they have prescribed you to a speech therapist. And so you have been going to a speech therapy a few times a week, and probably 30 minutes a session. And each session will be like a couple of $100, or maybe somewhere like average, it starts from $100 to $200, somewhere in the range, um, for each 30 minutes. And probably the speech therapist will make will be playing with your kid to just seek your kid's attention. That's all it'll be. And this can go for months, because 30 minutes of is not going to work anything, because it's just a teaspoon of salt in the ocean, something like that. Well, if your kid is not talking a word, a single word, and never spoke a single word, then no speech therapist can do any magic to make the kid speak in 30 minutes therapy session a couple of times in a week. In my opinion, it's just a waste of time and effort, since the return of investment is very less. Means your time, your money, and the time and money will stress you a lot. This path is not going to be very optimal for you, because your kid is not speaking. If your kid is not speaking, speech therapist cannot put stick in your kid's mouth to pull words. That's not the way it works, because speech comes from inner thoughts. Means your kid has to have that motivation from the mind. So there is nothing a speech therapist can do except seeking attention, playing, seeking attention. Then at some point, if a kid recognize your speech therapist, if a speech therapist is really attractive person, means like attractive person for the kid, and and then maybe your kid recognize, and because that time it'll be probably you might have paid three thousand to $4,000. Maybe you had lucky if you have insurance. If not, it'll be more, because that will be like 20-30 sessions. Even that time your kid will recognize, or maybe pay attention to the speech therapist. Even then the kid doesn't speak, they will make you to come again and again. That's going to be an everlasting story. But your kids will learn and grow as time goes. So it happens naturally. So they cannot take credit for that. But you can still do it for the sake of understanding how, if you don't know how to deal with your kid or engage with your kid. But what I would recommend, what is more optimal in my case is, let me think. In my opinion, it's just a waste of time, as I told you before. Instead, you engage with your kid on a daily basis. You can do the same thing. Your speech therapy is not really doing any magic. Science is simple. You talk to your kid. You should not have a thought that your kid. You will not understand what you're saying. No, your kid can learn from their inside their mother. So it means they can hear the sound, they can recognize the difference. So that means they're learning from inside the womb. So talk to the kid, and then make your kid engage with other kids. Put that in a place that they can recognize more human noise, human sound, birds, and all these things. And talk to your kid about things that you are doing. Let's say you're just a carpenter. Talk to them how to make table, how to make a chair. Tell the difference. Say that you're a computer guy. Don't talk to your kid how to write a program. Maybe it works someday, but your kid has not started to talk. So talk to some stories, imaginary stories or something, and take to grocery stores, show things, and ask your kid, hey, do you want eggs? Let's get some milk, and just it's okay. Your kid is not paying attention, it's fine, but your kids are hearing. And take a stroller around and talk about things that happens around, maybe on the street or in the park. Just engage in the conversation, even, or talk about ducks and birds. Indoor, if you're doing something, a mom is doing indoor activities like washing clothes or anything, painting, washing utensils. uh, Engage them, just talk to them. If you make your kid engage with other kids, that will motivate your kid speech. So motivation is an internal thing, as you know. It can happen from your kid's thought process. If your kid's brain language system is still evolving or delayed, language can be delayed as well. So the best approach that I have found in to talk to your kid and introduce your kids with many other kids that motivate your kid to speak in the near future. Also, make sure that do not be proactive to your kid by giving things to your kid even before your kid wants it. Let me explain an example. So mothers, mostly they are more care for their kids. It's just a natural thing. So let's say 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, my kid will be hungry. I would go feed my kid with whatever the baby food in the morning, and then, oh, it's 12, 11:30 or 12 o'clock, let me go get some food for my baby. Evening 7 o'clock, I'll get food for my baby. No, all these things just happen as of like a time system, but that's actually a very big mistake. You have to let your baby to cry, ask for food. That's the first thing. Second thing, do not offer anything without your kid wants, or make your kid to ask for things. You do not provide or facilitate things upfront. So make your kid to ask whatever they want. Even first couple of weeks, they may have trouble communicating. This doesn't mean that I'm telling not to feed your kid. Okay, there is a difference between these things. So as a parent, you can only tolerate to, let's say, if your kid is hungry for um, mostly like 8 o'clock, but you can just wait for 15-20 minutes that day. If a kid doesn't show any uh, interest of food maybe you can feed that day. And then next food, delay a little bit. Wait for your kid to cry. And once your kid cries, then you feed. That means it's hungry. And then you try that. So I'm not telling you to, make your kid to starve. So you got my point, right? Don't put your kid to starvation mode. That's not what all this all about. All this about, don't be proactive, make your kid to ask. So if it's a 2 years old baby, 3 years old baby, probably the kid will cry initially that it's hungry, doesn't know it's hungry because it's some kind of a feeling, and slowly start moving towards food. If the food is far away from a kid, then kid cannot reach to the food, probably the kid will show hand to the food, and then that's the time to ask, what do you want? Why are you coming here? What are you looking at? And then your kid probably will say food or some kind of sound it makes against that food. So that's where you need to catch it. So from tomorrow onwards, that food's name is that sound. So you need to make sure, remember that sound and repeat that sound. So when you get to a point where your kid knows to ask the same sound, then slowly twist that sound into a food. Let's say you are dealing with um, puree or a juice. If a kid says something else in the past to identify that, then slowly you have to turn that into a juice, because that's where your kid has to travel uh, from some sound to a reasonable or a meaningful sound. Okay, the last and the very important one is gut health. So kids' gut health will include our organs start from mouth to their rectum. So all these organs involved from in the system from mouth to rectum should play a major role for the kids' development. So the important thing that here the enzymes in your kids' gut will play a major role in kids' development and absorbing the nutrients to the development of the brain and its function. So you also make sure that you include all the promoting enzymes promoting food, especially like yogurt or a fermented food, fermented batters, and any kind of all kinds of fermented food that you can possibly think of, which is suitable for the kid. You should start including all those food and fruits, especially like pineapple and other fruits which can have good enzymes, and also leafy vegetables and all the stuff which improve the absorption of nutrition in the gut, which would result in a fast development of the kid's brain and its function, and which will in turn result in their language development and overall development in nature. So I can list some of the food and remedies that you could try in the description of this video, and you can get all these things in grocery stores, which is going to be much cheaper, or Asian stores, which is going to be much cheaper than ordering it online. So thank you for watching my video. So if you like, give me a thumbs up and let me know your feedback. So parents, just wait for the day, stay positive, and it all will come down to you guys. And my kid spoke at 7. Do try to promote and make it faster as possible. If your kid speaks, we don't have to talk about this video. If not, help them. Thank you. Thank you for watching.